Hey everybody, and welcome to our video for our last reading of the summer term. Get excited. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you because I prepared a PowerPoint, and I hope it works. Let's see if I can do it correctly this time. Okay, I think so. All righty. Let's hit play. Okay, so today we're going to talk about public speaking. And public speaking is one of those areas where a lot of people have a lot of anxiety. I myself was someone who was petrified of public speaking. I could act. I was in all kinds of plays and musicals, and I could take on a character and do that. The idea of standing up and presenting my ideas in front of someone was enough cause for me to, sweat and feel like I'm going to throw up and sort of black out a little and shaking, and that was me. So it's something I've had to work on throughout my life and throughout my career, and it takes practice for a lot of people. Some people have this amazing natural gift at public speaking, and then there's the rest of us. And so we're going to give you an opportunity to try it in a less pressure, lower pressure situation so that maybe you'll be more confident when you go forth. Okay, so take a deep breath. Let's go. All right, so types of speeches. So there are more than this, but these are generally, most speeches fall into these categories. A speech to inform, which is a speech where you're explaining something to someone. For example, when I taught public speaking this spring, I had a student who the topic for their speech to inform was Formula One racing. I had one who was focused on a nonprofit that she liked to volunteer for and work for in her hometown. I've had people do I had one on the truth of The Bachelor, like how The Bachelor's really filmed. And as a Bachelor fan, I loved that one. And then I had one about Boston, the city of Boston, and it focused very specifically on sports in the city of Boston. So a speech to inform. A speech to inform is not necessarily a persuasive speech. Everything's an argument, so you're making an argument to inform, which means you're trying to persuade us to believe this. But it's not necessarily you're not taking a stance, you are informing us. A speech to demonstrate. So we see this a lot in the classroom. You're exposed to speeches to demonstrate all the time. We see them on TV a lot too. So that focuses on a demonstration of, it can be anything, an invention, a technique. Speech to persuade, which is very much like the persuasive pieces that you've been outlining to write. And so with persuasion, we're trying to change someone's mind, or at least cause them to pause and think. A speech to entertain, those are often funny ones, but even then, there's always a purpose. So something like, I love a good roast, so that would be a speech to entertain. But the purpose is actually to honor someone. So there's always a purpose, even if we kind of chalk it up to, oh, it's just for entertainment. And then the speech to inspire, or the ceremonial speech. And this category includes toasts, wedding toasts, eulogies, introductions, award acceptances, all that jazz. So you're going to choose either to present a speech to inform, or a speech to inspire, or a ceremonial speech. So those are going to be your options. Okay, so here are some things for your consideration. When you're thinking about what kind of speech you want to give and what your topic should be, you should ask yourself these questions. What's my purpose? What am I trying to do here? Can I do it in the time allowed? For you, it's going to be 8 to 10 minutes. Can I fill that time? So you have to get to at least 8 minutes. And I typically take off 2 points. Is it 2? No, 5. 5 points for every minute that you go under, that you come in under, and for every minute you go over. So can you fill that time? And sometimes I've found that when I'm working with students on written work or on speaking, they'll say, well, there's nothing else to say. Okay, there's always something else to say, even if it's giving one more example or sharing one more story. I believe you can fill the time. If not, then you need to pick a different topic. Do I have enough information or can I get it? And with that as well, you need to ask if you are qualified enough to give this talk. One of the things that you're going to need to do in your speech is to establish your credibility on the subject, whatever that might be. And so, so you don't want to pick something you don't know anything about. Now, this doesn't mean you have to be an expert. For example, maybe I would do a presentation on the history of cupcakes. I'm really hungry right now. And okay, I mean, I'm not a baker. I haven't gone to culinary arts school. I'm actually pretty bad at making cupcakes, but I have a lot of really good ideas. But I have baked many a cupcake for my children for their class at school and their birthday parties. And so I can talk about that. Okay, so you don't have to be like expert level, but you need to have some experience or there needs to be some reason you chose this topic. Who is my audience? We talked about that earlier in the term, but of course you want to know who the audience is. Part of that too, and we'll talk about this a little bit later as well, is that you want to make sure that you're speaking to your audience on their level. Will my audience be intrigued? Is this interesting to anyone but me, or can I make it interesting? And how can I use visual aids to enhance my message? Okay, so once you decide what your topic is, you need to come up with your purpose. And from your purpose, you'll create your thesis statement. Your thesis statement will be presented in the introduction, just like when you write an essay. And just remember these points about a thesis. It needs to be a declarative sentence. It's not a question. A question is not a statement. It's a question. So it needs to be a declarative statement. So you need to just tell me. It should be a complete sentence. It should be specific, not something just general. Today I'm going to tell you about Formula One racing. Yippity skippity. Now, what my student did was they picked one particular Formula racing driver and told us about his history. In doing so, they told us about Formula One racing. There needs to be a single idea, so really focus, and then you need to reflect your consideration of the audience. So what do you know about your audience? How will they respond to this? Are there certain words I need to use to lay this out where it won't be I won't be putting off members of the audience before I ever get going? That's more with persuasive speeches, but make sure that you consider your audience. You know, if you're speaking to an audience of undergrads and you're going to inform them about smartphones, they all need that. All right, moving on. Okay, so your sources. Be ethical. That means to not use information to try to overly manipulate. Don't skew your sources. Don't take something and then turn it into something it's not. Just be honest with the sources is what it means. Make sure you cite any sources that you use. And so all you really need to do for that when you're speaking is say, you know, I was reading the American Journal of Psychiatry and this is what it said. Okay. Don't plagiarize. So once again, I'm interested in your words, no one else's. And make sure you evaluate your sources just like you would in writing a paper, right? Is this a solid source? If it's on the internet, is it .edu, .org, or is there some way to tell if this is legit? And if not, find something else. Okay, public speaking. Practice, 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 practice. I suggest practicing in the exact spot where you plan to do your speech. So if we were on campus and you were going to speak to us, I would suggest you come and practice in the room where we are. And this is because there's a nervousness that often comes with public speaking, but if you've been standing in that spot before and you've practiced the speech there, then you know that you're doing it for the second time, like that this isn't the first. The worst is when you're asked to give a speech and you walk out on this huge stage with all these lights and you've never been there before and it can be overwhelming. Or standing up in front of your class and you realize you've never had that perspective before standing in front of the classroom. So you're going to record your speeches because it's where we are, but I still recommend standing where you're going to do the speech because it will give you that comfort. You know, you have to be prepared as well for changes in that. You never know when you're going to be trying to record your speech and you wait till the last minute, so it's kind of now or never, and then someone decides to start mowing their lawn at 11:30 at night, and that's all we hear. So you want to be comfortable. You want to have practiced and prepared so that when things like that happen, you can make like a quick joke like, who mows their lawn at 11:30 at night, and just keep going. That's fine. Acknowledge the interruptions. Don't pretend they're not happening. Just acknowledge them. But practice is key, and have a goal each time you practice. So this time when I practice, I'm going to work on emphasizing certain words. The next time I practice, I'm going to work on slowing down my speech. The next time I practice, I'm going to focus on the gestures I want to add into my talk. Right? So practice multiple times and have a focus for each one. Don't expect to just nail it right out of the gates. You want to smile. Now, there are certainly some somber occasions where you'll be asked to publicly speak. But even in those occasions, we often see people smiling. I was at a funeral recently for one of my former high school students. She's very young, and it was a tragic death, a result of addiction. And her family got up to speak, and they smiled, and they talked about Grace, and they talked about memories of her, and they begged people to help their loved ones who are facing addiction. And they did so much of that with a smile, which was very sincere. Now, if it's not a place to smile, don't do it. That's not what I'm saying. Don't get up there at some, I mean, if, after a national tragedy, the president should get there and start smiling. I mean, that's not what I'm saying. But if it's appropriate, smile. You also want to watch yourself when you're practicing. So I recommend recording yourself several times before you do the final one. And I actually very much recommend that you record it and then send it to a classmate and say, okay, what do you see? What can I do better? Because often you don't notice your own little idiosyncrasies. You don't notice if you're somebody who does the hair flip, or if you do this thing with your eyes, or maybe you lick your lips a lot, and we don't know because we just do these things every day. Someone else can notice those for you, or maybe you'll see it in the video. The same with your pause words. Everyone has a pause word. Mine is okay. I say it all the time, every time I pause. Okay, moving on. Okay? I've had to work on getting that out, and it still sneaks itself in all the time. But you'll hear those if you record yourself. Make sure that when you decide where you're going to do your recording for class, that you notice what's in your background. I had students, once we went virtual this spring, I had a student who kept recording his speeches. He was clearly in bed. I couldn't quite put my finger on it. I couldn't. And then the last speech, I saw a pillow propped up behind him. I'm like, dude, you should be standing when you do these speeches. Stand up and pay attention to what's behind you. I don't care if it's your dining room and you've got a mess of craft supplies on the table. But just be mindful. You want to try to take away anything that's super distracting, but you can also use the background to set the right tone for your speech, or to suggest something about you that you would subconsciously want us to know when we're listening to your speech. So just give it some thought. The biggest area for improvement that I have found over the years in teaching speaking is to slow down. And I know what you're thinking. Well, that's ironic, Megan, because you speak at the speed of a bullet train. Yes, I know that I do. That's because I'm trying to make the most of your time right now. But when you're giving a speech, slow down. You are probably speaking faster than you know. That's something to listen for if you record yourself. You want to slow down. You want to use pauses for emphasis. Say something that's important, pause. Let it resonate with the audience. If you ask a rhetorical question, pause. Let us answer it, right? So slow down and use pauses. Silence is okay. I mean, I don't need a solid minute of silence, but a few seconds can be really powerful in your speech. When you step up to speak, I suggest that you stand up, look at your notes, take a deep breath, look up, make eye contact with someone, smile, go back to the center, and begin. It's okay to to collect yourself before you start speaking. No one expects you to run up there and just get right in the microphone and go for it. It's fine. Take the time you need. All right, style. So there's plain style, the golden medium. I feel like that's not the right term, but and then grand style. Plain is just, we're talking. Grand is fancy with all kinds of figurative elements like metaphors and similes and all that good stuff. You want to speak somewhere in the middle. It needs to be plain enough where we all understand you, but you want to have a little bit of flair with perhaps a metaphor here and there, or you know, an oxymoron, or, you know, all those figures of speech that maybe like way back you remember learning maybe last time in high school. And you can find a list of them on the internet. So figurative language is good. Rhetorical questions are awesome with speeches. A rhetorical question can serve many purposes. So one thing a rhetorical question can do is it can plant an idea in your audience's mind. So, and we've talked about this a little bit, I think. But for example, if I say, what would you do if you woke up tomorrow and realized that there were a giant elephant in your backyard? When you do that, when you ask a question, we as humans answer it. We at least see the image in our minds. So a rhetorical question can be used to have a conversation with the audience, even if they aren't speaking back to you. You ask a question, we pretty much automatically answer them. You can plant an image in someone's mind, like I just did with you, of the elephant in your backyard. And then that's also how you can make points. You can also say things like, you lay out your whole claim and then you say, how can you not agree? Right? You get people thinking. So rhetorical questions are important because they help to keep an active audience. All right, know your audience, avoid jargon. And jargon is like specified words for a certain area. So the Army has jargon. The medical field, there's jargon, specific words that are used in that area alone. You want to reduce jargon as much as possible if you're speaking to a general audience. And if you must use jargon, then briefly explain. Not in an insulting way, but just to help the audience understand. When I had the student present on Formula One racing, honest to goodness, I didn't have the first clue what it was. I grew up in a household that loved NASCAR, but they didn't really watch Formula One. And once they started explaining, I was like, oh, that's right. But they would use some terms and refer to some places that I wouldn't have known. And so those were explained. Use humor as appropriate. That's for you to decide, but you can certainly use humor to your benefit in a talk, and it keeps your audience engaged too. And employ the appeals ethos. You've got to establish your credibility in the speech. Okay, why are you the one doing this? If it's a toast at a wedding, you have to say who you are, because most of the people in that room have never met you. If you're giving a speech to inform, then tell me why you chose this topic and why you're someone I should listen to about it. Okay, so bookends. To start your speech, there's several ways you can try. One is by using a question, a rhetorical question. One is by telling a story. And if you do that, use some rich details for us. Make us smell it, make us taste it, make us see it. You can start with a surprise. You know, if you're giving a talk on being an introvert and you come out and you're like, well, hey, people, like that can be a surprise, but just be really careful with those. Those go wrong pretty quickly. Or you can start with a quote as well, a quote that kind of sets the tone or the point of your speech. You'll want to make sure that in your introduction, you state your specific purpose and your thesis. Preview the main points if you'd like, and establish your credibility. What you don't want to do, don't do this, please. In this speech, I'm going to explain to you that blah, blah, blah. No, just tell me what you're doing, okay? Just state it. And then to end your speech, you can return to the question, the quote, the story, which is nice. It gives a nice circular close. And if you do that, you can either repeat it, or you can connect everything you've said back to it, or you can make a new point with it, or you just mic drop. If you're like some amazing person at ending speeches, just like boom, then great. It makes me think of the President Obama mic drop at the last correspondence dinner where the president comes out and roasts all the journalists. And at his last one, he like literally mic dropped, but it was an amazing ending. One of my favorite endings to a speech. Let's see if I can do this correctly this time. Let me stop the share. And then let me start it again and see if I can make this work. We're going to try, folks. You won't be able to hear it though. Okay, I would like for you to go and check out this speech, Georgia Tech Freshman Convocation Epic Sophomore Welcome Speech, right? You don't have to listen to all 7 minutes. Go to about 5 minutes and just listen to the last couple minutes of this thing. Like I love this speech. I think it is stellar. And he ends it, no one will ever forget what this was about. Okay. You also want to recall, when you're ending your speech, the residual message. So what do you want people to remember when this speech is done? And can you believe it? Pretty sure, oh, there we go. What do you want people to remember? What's the idea you want them to be left with? Make sure that that's reiterated at the end of your speech. All right, so let's wrap this thing up. Okay. Organization. You can organize your speech multiple ways. You can choose chronological, and you want to do what makes the most sense. So chronological, something in history. Spatial. So spatial is like, oh gosh, what's a good example of spatial? No, not really cause and effect. If you're talking about a journey that you're going on, or even if you're explaining something scientific and you're starting at like a small level and then growing larger, that's what you mean by spatial. Topical, so by different topics related to your ultimate topic. Causal, so cause and effect. And remember that causal is not correlation. This gets confused in the media a lot. Correlation are things that happen at the same time. Causation is when one affects the other. So two events can be correlated, but it doesn't mean that one caused the other. And then problem solution. Also, make your notes work for you. You're allowed to have an outline. So feel free on the outline to bold certain words or italicize them and put them in certain colors so that you make sure that you emphasize those. Hold on, I've got a 5-year-old next to me. Daddy's going to pick up dinner in just a minute. Yes, you may. All right, use gestures and expressions wisely. So I love a good facial expression, right? Gestures. You can point, but just use it sparingly. You can emphasize, use it sparingly. Use these sparingly so that they mean something when they're seen. Make sure that you use transitions when you're talking, just as you would when you were writing, and make sure you're focusing on details and specifics. This needs to be memorable. All right, so here's what you're going to do. You're going to record a speech to inform or a speech to inspire. It should be about 8 to 10 minutes long. You can use an outline, but at the very beginning of your video, you need to show it to me so I can see. Just start with one, baby. Sorry. But I want to see that you're using just an outline. And part of this is just on your honor. I'm completely aware that you could have your whole speech written out on poster board in front of you, but you really need to try using just an outline. And so what you'll do is at the beginning of the video, you'll take your outline, you'll say, here's my outline, and then you can go. You don't have to use one. You can use note cards if you, big note card if you want, but I need nothing more than an outline. I want some of this to be just to show that you practiced. And then the outline itself should be a sentence outline or a topic outline. A sentence outline just means that every point is written out in sentence form. And sorry. Hold on, I gotta pause. I'm so into it too, and we're almost done. But hang on. All right. Okay, I'm back. So sorry about that. There's a lot going on in the Coon House right now. All right, let's get back to it because we're almost done, guys. Okay. All right. So for a sentence outline is an outline where all of the information is written in sentence form. So each line is a sentence. So you'll have your point, it's a full sentence, and then an example, it's a full sentence. I find those actually really difficult to use in speeches, but if you're someone who struggles with what words to emphasize and all that jazz, then it can be helpful. A topic outline is very helpful to me, and that's not sentences, just a phrase for each point that you want to make. Do use a traditional outline structure with the Roman numerals. A lot of word processors programs will have a template that you can follow, but if you need examples, you can Google it. It's universal, the outline structure. So use that. And you're going to be working on that first. So for this week, your assignments are, let's stop the share. He hasn't left yet. Go to the window. My son insists that his dad waves at him every time, actually, that any of us wave at him anytime we leave the house. It's kind of adorable until you forget to wave. Okay, so for this week, what you're going to do is you've watched the video, you've got a forum entry as usual, and then due Saturday, okay, sorry, and then due Saturday is an outline for your speech, which we just went over. So in the outline, if you're doing the speech to inform, I think it's fairly straightforward. Just put in your points and examples. If you're doing a speech to inspire, then very similar. I will say that if you choose a speech to inspire, I have a few more videos on the different types. Like if you decide you want to do an elegy or you decide you want to do a toast, on this YouTube page in a different playlist. It's in the Calm 101 playlist. That's public speaking. You can see some videos on specific types of inspirational messages. I don't have one for a speech to inform because there are different types, but not categorized quite like a speech to inspire. So if you choose the inspirational ones and you want to go and look at some examples or some other pointers that I have, you can feel free to go to that playlist, Calm 101, and you'll see them in there. A speech to inform is pretty straightforward. Tell us about it. Tell me about it. I'm always interested in what other people are interested in, and I love learning. So so please, by all means, you can inform me about you, about your family. You can tell me about a country that you visited that and what it was like for you. You can. I had one I remember too that was backpacking tips for beginners. That was a great one. I learned a lot in that. So you can choose, and this is a chance for you to show your personality. Last thing I would say is just to make sure that you use a proper tone when you're speaking. And feel free to use humor where you want. If you're going to do a speech to inspire and you want to do an award acceptance speech, I salute you because I've had my Tony Award acceptance speech prepared since the 7th grade. So feel free to do that. If you want to embody that you are at a red carpet event and you are introducing your favorite artist, then by all means, do it. So really be creative, choose something you're interested in. That will help us all be interested in your speech. And so for this week, all you need to do is the forum and then write the outline for your speech. Next week, you'll actually record the speech, and then we're going to do some peer evaluation of them. So the rest of the other members of the class will be watching your speeches, and so just remember that all of us are your audience. And then we'll talk about interviews and kind of wrap this whole thing up. So I hope that was helpful. And if you have questions or you want me to look over your outline or you're not sure if it's a good topic, then feel free to shoot me an email and I'll be happy to help. All right, you guys, good luck with everything. I hope this class is helpful and that you're learning a lot and practicing a lot too. And I'll see you soon. Bye.